This cannot be possible. These girls cannot have the biological parents you told us they had.
My ex-husband was awarded full custody of our twin daughters, and for 2 endless years, he erased me from their lives as if I had never been their mother. Then, one of my girls was diagnosed with cancer and desperately needed a bone marrow donor, so I came running. But when the doctor looked down at my test results, her face went pale. This cannot be possible. And the words she said after that shattered my ex-husband in a way no courtroom ever had. Graham, my husband then, and my ex-husband now, had won full custody of our twin daughters and made sure I was kept completely away from them. "You are not fit to be their mother," he told me in court, his voice so cold it felt less like a sentence and more like a burial. I had no money left, no strength left, and no real way to fight back against the polished lies he had placed in front of the judge. 2 years passed. Then one of our daughters was diagnosed with leukemia, and suddenly the hospital reached out to me because she needed a bone marrow donor. I went without hesitating, without thinking about my work, my pain, or the humiliation I had swallowed for 2 years. But when the doctor began the first test, her expression changed, and she quietly asked to run it again. The second test did not calm anyone down. Instead, it brought an entire medical board into the room. Doctors, nurses, and specialists stood around the results, staring at the papers as though they were looking at something that should not exist. And then the doctor said the sentence that made Graham's face collapse, as if the secret he had buried for years had finally crawled back into the light. The call came at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday near the end of August, the kind of gray morning that already felt heavy before the day had even begun. I remember the exact time because I had been awake since 5, sitting alone in my office, staring at blueprints for the Morrison Tower project and forcing my exhausted mind into load-bearing calculations, steel frame specifications, elevator shafts, emergency exits, and anything else that could keep me from thinking about the emptiness inside my own life. Anything was better than remembering that I had not seen my daughters in 2 full years, not touched their hair, not heard their laughter in my kitchen, not kissed their foreheads before sleep. My phone buzzed across the drafting table, vibrating against pencils, rulers, and marked-up plans, and an unknown Seattle number lit up the screen. For one suspended second, I almost let it ring. Seattle was where they lived now, far from the Portland life they had once shared with me. Seattle was where Graham had taken Sophie and Ruby after the judge declared me unfit, that ugly word still turning to ash on my tongue every time I remembered it. But something deep in my chest tightened, and before I could talk myself out of it, I picked up the phone. "Ms. Hayes." The voice belonged to a woman, calm, careful, but carrying that quiet urgency doctors always have when they are trying not to frighten you too soon. "This is Dr. Sarah Whitman from Seattle Children's Hospital. I'm calling about your daughter, Sophie." My daughter? Those 2 words hit me so hard I had to grip the edge of the table. I had not been allowed to say them out loud for 732 days. "What happened?" I asked, though my throat had gone dry. "Is she hurt?" "Sophie was admitted to our emergency department early this morning," Dr. Whitman said. "Her white blood cell count is critically low, around 1,200 cells per microliter. Normal range is usually between 4,500 and 10,000. We are running additional tests, but we suspect acute myeloid leukemia." The blueprints blurred in front of me until the careful black lines became nothing but streaks. Leukemia. My 10-year-old daughter, the little girl I had once rocked through fevers and nightmares, had cancer. "I need you to come to Seattle immediately," Dr. Whitman continued. "Sophie will likely need a bone marrow transplant, and we need to test you as a potential donor. Time is very important." "I'm in Portland," I said, already standing, already reaching for my keys with shaking fingers. "I can be there in 3 hours." "Good. Ask for me at the pediatric oncology unit when you arrive. And Ms. Hayes..." She paused just long enough for dread to crawl up my spine. "I know the custody situation is complicated, but right now Sophie needs her mother." When the call ended, I just stood there staring down at the Morrison Tower plans spread neatly across my desk. 6 months of work lay in front of me, a $2.8 million contract. The project that could rescue my struggling architecture firm from the edge of collapse. My business partner Marcus had scheduled the presentation for 9 a.m. The clients were already flying in from San Francisco, expecting confidence, precision, and a future built in steel and glass. I called Marcus before my courage could break. "I need you to cancel the Morrison meeting," I said. "What?" "Isabelle, this is our biggest project in 2 years. If we don't present today, we may not get another chance." "My daughter has cancer," I said, and the words tore through me all over again. "I'm going to Seattle." Silence stretched across the line. Marcus knew about the custody battle. He had seen me become a ghost of myself after Graham took Sophie and Ruby away, after the judge accepted the fabricated psychiatric report that painted me as unstable, dangerous, and unworthy. "Go," Marcus said finally, his voice lower now. "I'll handle Morrison." I grabbed my bag and ran out without looking back. Interstate 5 North became a long gray tunnel of wet pavement, blurred headlights, and dark green pine trees sliding past the windows. I drove 10 miles over the speed limit, hands locked so tightly around the steering wheel that my knuckles turned white, while Dr. Whitman's words repeated in my mind like a punishment. Acute myeloid leukemia. Critically low white blood cell count. Bone marrow transplant. I had not seen Sophie since the last custody hearing, the day Graham walked out with both girls and I walked out with nothing. She'd been 8 then, small for her age, with Graham's dark eyes and my stubborn chin, clutching Ruby's hand while trying to be brave in a hallway full of strangers. The judge had granted Graham sole custody based on a psychiatric evaluation that claimed I suffered from bipolar disorder, alcohol dependency, and emotional instability severe enough to endanger my own children. Every word had been a lie, but lies printed on official paper had more power than a mother sobbing the truth. And now, 2 years later, the same system that had helped Graham bury me was calling me back because my blood might be the only thing that could save Sophie. By the time I reached Seattle Children's Hospital, my hands were trembling so badly I could barely sign my name at the front desk. The pediatric oncology unit smelled like sanitizer, plastic tubing, and quiet fear. Dr. Sarah Whitman met me outside a room with a clipboard pressed to her chest and kindness in her eyes that almost made me fall apart. "Ms. Hayes," she said softly, "thank you for coming so quickly." "I want to see her," I said. "You will," she promised, "but first we need to begin donor testing. Sophie's condition is progressing quickly and we cannot lose time." I nodded because I had no choice. I would have cut myself open in that hallway if they had told me it would help her. They drew my blood. They took my history. They asked questions about illnesses, pregnancies, medications, and family background while I answered like a machine, my mind fixed on the room down the hall where my daughter was lying sick without me. Then, Dr. Whitman returned. At first, her face was professional. Then her eyes moved across the page in her hand and something in her expression shifted. She looked at me, then back at the report. "Is something wrong?" I asked. She did not answer immediately. Instead, she said, "We need to repeat the test." So they did. Another vial. Another wait. Another hour of me sitting in a plastic chair under fluorescent lights, listening to the distant beep of machines and wondering whether Sophie still remembered the way I used to braid her hair. When the second result came back, Dr. Whitman was not alone. 2 other doctors came with her. Then another. Then a specialist whose badge I did not read because all I could see was the way they were avoiding my eyes. Graham arrived during that terrible silence, dressed in his expensive coat, jaw tight, already angry that I was there. "What is she doing here?" he snapped. Dr. Whitman did not look at him first. She looked at the papers. Then she looked at me. Then she looked at Graham, and the entire room seemed to hold its breath. "This result cannot happen in the way you have described your family," she said slowly. Graham's face twitched. "What are you talking about?" he demanded. Dr. Whitman's voice dropped, careful and clinical, but every word struck like a hammer. "The donor compatibility test has revealed something we must address before any transplant decision is made." I felt the floor tilt beneath me. Graham stepped forward, suddenly pale, and when Dr. Whitman unfolded the final page, his hand shot out as if he could stop the truth from being spoken.